Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, the link is in the description, as well as a link to our good friends at Critical Failures, where we're part of a live stream game Wednesday nights. Check us out. With that out of the way, we're going to talk about DM tips and whether or not you should DM and how do you jump in if you've never done it before. Alright, so going from being a player to a DM or just starting out as a DM, it is a different position. Obviously, being a player is a little easier. If you find you have a very chaotic or very busy life, maybe DMing is not the best opportunity for you because it does require some extra work. Now, is it scary? A little bit. You are more so on more than the other characters are. You do kind of set the pace and the tone. So if you're very big into RP, that will show as you portray the characters that you're running the game about. And those kinds of sequences that you interact with the party members, all those kind of really set the tone for everyone else. Now, I'm currently DMing a game for all new players, and I obviously love roleplay significantly more, so I tend to do things on a different level than everyone else does. It can be bizarre, it can be funny sometimes. Some other characters that are in the game are ecstatic, some of them are not. And using that to kind of help differentiate when I'm talking to some of the players helps me keep the game motivated and a little bit more interesting on my end. It helps give a variety of different characters, so maybe if they're meeting someone new, they don't know exactly who they're expecting. But again, that comes from me being more attuned to role-playing and liking that and enjoying that. I love it a lot. It's my great passion in this game. But if you're not that, do you have to be that way? No. No, you do not. First and foremost, as a DM, the most important thing that you need to ingrain into your mind is that you are playing with your friends to tell a story. It's your friends. It's people that you feel comfortable with. If you're with people that you don't feel comfortable with, don't DM. Like, it's not a thing that you owe anybody to do. You're doing this out of love for the game or love for spending time with the people that you're fortunate enough to spend that time with. Now, whether you're in person or you're doing some sort of digital means to do so, it's the modern era. Whatever works best for you guys works best for you guys. But you shouldn't feel pressured to do something that's not within your realm of comfortability. That's first and foremost. So it's important for you as a DM to make sure what you're comfortable with doing and what you're not. You don't have to role play out. You don't have to do voices. You don't have to keep consistently coming up with new different accents for everyone and different names on the spot. It doesn't have to be that way. Watching things like Critical Role or Dimension 20 or any of the other online stream games that are out there, including our own, does not mean you have to follow that in order to have a good game. That's just how each individual group plays. Critical Role are all trained actors, all trained voice actors. So them doing what they do sets an unusual standard for everyone else because no one else is trained actors. No one else is trained voice actors specifically. No one else has a history of improv. Like, they have a lot of great influences that make their skill set uniquely good for what they're doing. You don't need that. You don't. You can just say in a gruff manner, this dwarf says, I beseech you, drink this ale or get out of the tavern. And that can be enough. That can be how you guys mitigate. It's your friends first and foremost, and that's the most important thing. You guys are there to have fun. The standard is set by you. You don't have to do what you don't feel comfortable. But I will tell you this, the more you put into D&D, the more you get out. The more effort you put into your character, the more effort you put into each session, the more attentive you are, the better the game will be for you. And you see it very clearly. As a DM, you do have to put in a certain level of work. If you're homebrewing, I'd advise against it for your first campaign, simply because even if you do a couple of one-shots, you don't get how complex it can be and how great of a guideline running a campaign actually is. It sets you up for leveling, it sets you up for item placement, for story markers, for events that people can do, alternative actions that can lead certain ways, traps and like puzzles and things like that, and how to kind of space them out in a way that's not too overbearing, but also in a way that's challenging and keeps them alert. That's something that I think is really important, because making your own campaign isn't just throwing complex monster battles. It's not. It's telling a story, and how to tell that story through arcs is basically written out for you in a way that's very good for you. Now, do you have to follow the campaign word for word directly? No. After you've gone a few sessions, you're going to want to see things that you might want to change or do differently. And that's how you know you are gaining experience, because you're starting to tailor things. But that comes naturally. Don't push yourself. Don't write a level 20 adventure for your first time DMing. Go slow. Do yourself a favor. Grab one of the modules and just run with it. Just give it a shot, just so that way you can kind of see how D&D is laid out, because understanding the mechanical movements and the different acts and the different power scales shows you how to balance encounters a little bit better, shows you how to move characters from point A to point B, shows you how to leave the breadcrumbs so the party can chase them, as opposed to just forcing everything down the line. Now, what does every character want? How do they know? How do your players know what they want out of a game if they've never played before or they don't know? The most important thing that they want is their character to have meaning. To not just be someone who's just thrown into the mix, to have their character do something that's important. Figuring out what that is can be tiresome and difficult at times. The important thing to note is you have time in this game to be able to make it so that way you're not just going from... Sorry, my dog is underneath me. You're not just rushing through something. You have time. Give them the opportunity to make those choices. Give them the opportunity to want something. Find a character that a certain character is interested in, and use that. Use that to move things forward. Use that to bait them into doing things. Anything that a character shows interest in is a great way to pull them into the story. And once you have them locked into the story, that is the moment where things start to click. And it's important to kind of get there. The easiest way to do it is just take time and incorporate their backstory into the story. And that can be difficult depending on what you're doing or what you're running. Just know that taking the time to do a session 0 where you discuss characters, where you make things, where you get the characters to know each other, or discuss a little bit about them so the players meet each other on that kind of a format, helps you, because you then have that time from session 0 to start implementing where you want to put their character's backstory. And that's really the only thing that I really suggest for anybody that's playing D&D. Try to do that. Try to put that into the character story, because it helps. It's a great way to connect them to the story. It's a great way to connect them to each other, and it's a great way for them to have role play moments together, where like one of them goes like, "Oh, I didn't know you were part of this organization," or "I didn't know you lost people due to this problem," or "these cultists had ruined your life previously." It's a great moment for them to talk to each other. And when your players start talking to each other, it's no longer just waiting for that moment for them to roll dice. It's their characters going through this story. And I think that's great because, again, I'm a big roleplay enthusiast. If your party is not roleplay enthusiasts, if you just have min-maxers that want to hit high numbers, then learn to kind of DM for that. Take the pressure off of what your players don't want, and focus on what they do. It doesn't have to be cookie cutter. It doesn't have to hit all things at the same time. Some people just want to be hardcore adventurers. They just want to be uncovering clues and solving puzzles, and they really don't like combat. Wherever it is, focus on that. Dial it back on things you don't need. You don't need to be perfect on all things. What you need to be is fun and challenging enough that nobody's stumped for days, but that they're feeling rewarded for accomplishing these things. Whether it's combat, whether it's social interactions, whether it's role playing, whether it's adventuring, all those things have their own facets. Don't overthink it. Just put effort in the places where they want to see it. It's really, really that simple. So you found out what your players want. You have an idea. And again, I suggest you guys run a module first and then dive into homebrew after you've run a game so you can kind of see what it's like. So you find out what your players want. How do you actually put in that effort? You can say, oh, I tried really hard, but if it doesn't actually mean doing anything, how did you really try? Like, what was your method? How did you do it? My thing is, in a module, reading through, and you don't have to read the whole book every time you pick it up. Read where they are and conceptualize what they would want to do in that area. I find myself oftentimes if they're traveling, I come up with encounters just to kind of throw in the mix, just to kind of change things up. They don't have to be super challenging encounters. I find that an encounter that gives you a reason is more important than there's an encounter just to kill something. Having a purpose makes it more meaningful. They don't all have to be super challenging. There's plenty of super challenging fights, but they should all have meaning. I think that makes more sense throughout the game, as opposed to just random like video game encounter experiences. But my players like a mix of combat and roleplay. So we do combat, we do roleplay. Try to incorporate enough so that way it's not just stagnant one thing consecutively, and to throw something else in the mix every now and again. I think it just makes it a little bit more interesting. But if your players like one specific thing, take the time to focus on what those things are. Every campaign module has random encounters. If they like random encounters, here's a whole bunch of lists that you can put together. If they like events, there's all these events that occur in all these locations. As you play and spend more time doing sessions, going from doing a first session to doing session like 4 or 5, you get a certain level of comfortability. It comes in fast. You will start coming up with ideas that will deviate from the campaign, deviate and add into those kinds of things super fast. It happens naturally, and you'll feel that go. Just foster that, grow that, encourage your time to work on that. Set aside a little bit of time during your week before session to work on what you're going to do in that next session. And then before the actual session starts, take the time, read what you have about where they are at so you are familiar, so you're ready to go. That is very important in preparation and putting in that effort before game time. This also helps to kind of mitigate your own kind of not knowing, because you had some time to think about it, you put some stuff together, and then you refreshed all the base knowledge that you really needed right before the game, so that way when it starts, you're already in that moment where you have that fresh and you're not overloaded with everything else that's coming after it. With all that said and done, we're going to bring this video to a close. Those are just really like rudimentary tips. We're going to go more in depth and kind of broaden all of those and go into some real strong tips for what we have for everything and moving forward, especially things that are going to come up frequently, like when your players stump you with information. That being said, if you made it this far, thank you so much. Definitely hit a like and subscribe. If you've ever DM'd your first game and had a whole bunch of chaotic experiences or difficulties or problems that you're facing, definitely let us know. We definitely want to jump on those and give you guys as much help as we can, as fast as we can, because we know that can be time sensitive, and maybe you have a game coming and you're stressing out about that. We want to help you get there. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. A big thank you to our good friends at Critical Failures. We are part of a live stream game with them every Wednesday night. If you're interested in becoming a supporter of either one of those, the Patreon link is in the description, as well as a link to Critical Failures. And thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.